Hello everyone, Vilio here, and welcome to Easy to Master, Easy to Carry, featuring Annie in the mid lane. Statistically, 90% of players are in the bottom 3 leagues, Bronze, Silver, and Gold. The champions that I present in this series of videos are champions that you can play a while with little practice, ultimately becoming a part of the top 10% of League of Legends players. This series of videos are here to help the bottom 90% of players, which means Gold and below, to advance further with certain powerful champions that are easier to play and easier to carry with. However they may be easy to play, it is crucial to understand them properly, which is why I'm making a very detailed guide to provide as much information about them as possible. Today, like I said, we're having a look at Annie in the mid lane. We'll be looking at overall playstyles as well as down to the basics with runes, masteries, and spells. Annie is to many people very underrated. She only has 2 skill shots and both of them are relatively easy to land. She isn't really considered meta, although I think more people need to realize that meta doesn't really portray every champion like they should be portrayed. Annie is a straight up monster. Her lack of skill shots does not make her inferior in any sort of way to the other champions, rather the opposite. Now, without further ado, let's start with her spells. Starting with the basics, her spells, what they do and how to use them the most effectively. Her passive is called Pyromania, and it's basically like this. After 4 abilities, Annie gets a stun that lasts from 1.25 to 1.75 seconds depending on your level. This scales by your ultimate level. A good Annie player will at full stacks throw spells onto enemies, whether just to poke or go all in. The beautiful and powerful aspect of Annie's spells is that 2 of her spells are area of effect spells, which means that you can stun multiple enemies in fights. Primarily when you're fighting, you will want to use this passive to stun AD carries or mid laners. If you want to trick the enemies into thinking you're not really about to go all in, walk around with 2 or 3 stacks. They will often think of you less as a threat, but use 1 or 2 spells and then you can stun them and kill them. Now, Annie's Q is called Disintegrate. This is a single target ability, and it is the spell you want to start with at level 1. What is so good about Disintegrate, apart from it scaling from a ridiculous 80% of your ability power, is that if you kill a minion with this spell, it refunds all the mana, which means that you can farm extremely easily and efficiently, whilst also gaining stacks of your passive, and you can throw a stun onto the enemies and poke them or ult in them early in the laning phase. Now, Annie's W is called Incinerate. This is one of Annie's area of effect spells. She bursts out a fire in a cone in front of her, dealing major damage and stunning all enemies if she has her passive fully stacked. This is a relatively expensive spell to cast, so be careful not to use it too much in lane or else you will have no mana in no time. A very good poke strategy for Annie is to get 3 or 4 stacks of Pyromania, then attack the enemy later with a Q, then a W, and 1 auto attack to proc Thunderlord's passive off your Masteries, and you have dealt a significant amount of damage. Now, Annie's E is called Molten Shield. Annie takes reduced damage, as well as enemies who use basic attacks against her will take some magic damage. This is often used to just get stacks of Pyromania, however the 40% damage reduction at max level is certainly helpful in fights. Often, if I am clearing a major wave, I will go close, use Incinerate, and then my Molten Shield and all minions will all die when they attack you. Now, Annie's most significant spell is her ultimate, which is called Summon Tibbers. Annie walks around with a teddy bear, and her ultimate summons this bear, the giant, flamey, and very strong version. This is an area of effect spell when you first use it. It erupts an area that you choose in flames, dealing massive amounts of damage, also stunning them if you have 4 Pyromania stacks, of course. And then a bear starts running around, dealing area of effect magic damage by being close to enemies, as well as hitting them with his claws to deal additional damage. This, for the record, scales off your ability power. You can, of course, control them for up to 25 or up to 45 seconds as well. If you're going to start with Q, and you're also going to max Q, You will want to max W second, and max those two until level 6 when you take your ultimate. At level 7, you will often take one Molten Shield and go back to maxing Q and W. Lastly, max ultimate and E. However, if you're up against someone who harasses you a lot, such as Zed or LeBlanc, you want to take Molten Shield at level 4 or 5. If you're unable to poke the enemy in lane, or you're against someone who forces a farm lane, such as Karthus or Anivia, you will want to max W to clear waves more efficiently. Now, on to some combos that you can do with Annie. Keep in mind that you can swap the order of these spells and it will generally have the same impact. However, the Pyromania stun will change its impact if you choose to start with a single target spell instead of an area of effect stun. Now, Q, W, and one auto attack is basic lane poke. This is just to poke, and the auto attack is to proc the Thunderlord's passive. WEQ in a minion wave is efficient wave clear, and QRW is a combo to catch a single person with your stun, then proceeding to instantly burst them to death. Flash RQW is a way to engage, and it's the most efficient way to actually get the enemies caught off guard. You flash, you summon Tibbers, and you land that Tibbers onto the enemy's AD carrier mid laner, and more people if possible, and you will deal massive damage and disrupt enemies with stun. Right after you do this combo, it's also great to use Zhonya's because enemies will usually turn on your team when you do this engage, which leaves you taking no damage, and this is actually very important. Now onto her summoners. Now onto Annie's summoners. Annie's summoners are actually very standard. I take Flash and Ignite, and that's basically it. The Flash is of course essential to almost every champion, and the Ignite will give you so much more kill potential early and is essential to use against champions such as Dr. Mundo, Vladimir, or AD carries, or really any champion that can heal or has a lot of lifesteal. Now let's have a quick look at the Masteries for Annie. Thunderlord's Decree is superior to Deathfire Touch's Mastery in the Ferocity tree because it gives higher base damage and overall damage during short bursts of damage, which is what Annie really excels at. Deathfire Touch is generally better for champions that tend to do more DPS over a teamfight, such as Karthus or Anivia. The extra 5 cooldown reduction mastery is great to have so that you have 45% cooldown reduction and have very low cooldowns on your Tibbers all-in burst. A fun thing to note is that when you have 45% cooldown reduction, you can actually use your Tibbers, and by the time that Tibbers disappears naturally, the cooldown will be back down. So actually, if your Tibbers don't die, you can have a 24/7 Tibbers. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found this to be helpful, then please like the video. If you want to see more videos of me in the future, then do subscribe. And lastly, I hope you guys have a great day.